Hey everybody, Jay Widener, Reality Check, reading from the book A Monument to the End of Time, written with the late great Vincent Bridges. Today we are on chapter 7, section 4. This title of this is The Monument Speaks, the Season of the Apocalypse. Before I begin, this chapter is loaded with all sorts of esoteric symbols and things, and I'll help you get through it, but it's a tough one. If you're really into astrology, you'll probably love what you're about to hear. If you don't understand astrology, you may be a little bit having a little bit of difficulty. This is all about the timing of the apocalypse, and we target the date as the equinox of 2002, but also this is the beginning of this apocalyptic period. How long? We say 20 years, but it could be 30, 40 years. We don't know, but the monument is pointing at that date. And when I was in 2002, I was very interested in all of this, following it. And I began videotaping the sun to see, watching sunspots and going in close with filters and everything. And it was in 2002 that I began to watch as the sun went from yellow to white. It was very alarming. At the beginning of 2002, the sun was yellow, and by the end of 2002, it was a silvery white, which it has been that way now for 20 years. Those of us who are old enough to know or see know that the sun has changed color. It's a strange and eerie silvery color now. And since the monument at Hendaye is talking about the sun, it's important that we recognize that. All right, so this is a complex chapter. Bear with me, it gets better after this, but this is all about the cross. The monument speaks, the season of the apocalypse. And so now, with all the pieces of the Hendaye puzzle spread before us, we must make sense of the mystery. If we have read our clues correctly, that is, our solution must be self-contained and must be accurate. That is, capable of interpreting astronomical reality. Only then will the monument's message be clear and unambiguous. The upper cross tells us that the last judgment is timed to the precessional cycle of the equinoxes, and whether or not there is a place of refuge. This disaster happens when the precessional dragon axis, the basis of the tree of good and evil, forms a cross or right angle to the tree of life, the galactic dragon axis. The pillar, the Jed, reinforces this idea of precessional alignment with the galactic axis. The base presents a way to refine the timing of this event. We still need a starting point. Without that, we couldn't begin our calculations. However, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a 19th century magical group that preserved some key pieces of the puzzle, supplied the hint that if you put Leo on the spring equinox, the zodiac would align properly. If we use the beginning of the age of Leo, roughly 13,000 years ago, as our starting point, then the monument, once its symbology was understood, could be made to reveal a date for the beginning of the end of time. And this is something you should take note of. We're going to be talking about this in great detail. It shows you how the tarot card and intersects with the Cross of Hendaye. So keep that in mind as we go forward here. The answer is at once both simple and complex, and it confirms the depth of Fulcanelli's and the builder of the monument's understanding of the tree of life. We start with the base and its tarot attribution. East, the star, Aquarius, star. West, the sun, Leo, sun. North, the moon, Pisces, moon. South, last judgment, fire, forays. On the monument, the star and the moon are next to each other, suggesting that the northeast corner symbolizes the cusp of Aquarius Pisces. Opposite this is the junction of the sun and the element of fire. We can take this as the cusp of Leo Virgo since the sun is attributed to Leo. This forms one of our axes. The northwest-southeast line becomes the Scorpio Sagittarius Gemini Taurus galactic axis from center to edge, so that our simple arrangement of tarot attributions give us a correct alignment of the cube of space. If we use this as our starting point, the moment when the spring equinoxes fell on the cusp of Leo Virgo, we arrive at a date of March 22nd, 10,958 BCE. Half a precessional cycle later, 12,960 years, brings us to 2002, when Leo Virgo falls on the fall equinox. The monument also records this 180-degree rotation of symbols around the galactic axis. In 10,958 BCE, the sun rose in the east in Leo Virgo as the moon set in Aquarius Pisces. The monument reverses this with the sun in the west and the moon in the east to show the flip of precessional and midpoints, the Leo Virgo equinoxes. If the midpoint of the classically counted great year really falls on the fall equinox of 2002, then the monument should point directly to that moment in time. The arrangement of cherubic or fixed signs in the pattern of the 4 A's on the Last Judgment panel supports this alignment, as does the tympana designs of Arles and Chartres. But to be truly specific, the monument must give us something that precisely defines that moment in time. On the sun face, it does. The key, of course, is where to stand. Mevrill's clues suggest that we should take Champagne's frontispiece to Mystery of the Cathedrals literally and stand between the paws of the Sphinx on the Giza Plateau. Thanks to the Voyager 2 computer software, we can do this beforehand and check out our conclusions. Dawn on September 22nd, 2002, local Sphinx time is also the moment of the equinox, which brings the whole pattern into synchronicity. The sun rises on the cusp of Leo Virgo with the full moon setting on the cusp of Aquarius Pisces. In the sky, as the sun rises, are the 3 superior planets, Mars, Jupiter, close together in Leo and Cancer, Saturn on the mid-heaven cusp of Taurus Gemini, and below the horizon are the 2 inferior planets, Venus and Mercury, in Virgo and Libra. This matches the 4 stars of the sun face, with Mars and Jupiter above the horizon and Mercury and Venus below. However, all 3 superior planets are visible. Saturn stands high in the mid-heaven on the cusp of Gemini Taurus in opposition to the center of the galaxy. Fulcanelli is aware of this. Quote, "The age of iron has no other seal than that of death. Its hieroglyph is a skeleton bearing the attributes of Saturn, the empty hourglass, symbol of time ran out, and the scythe, reproduced in the figure 7, which is the number of transformation, of destruction, of annihilation," unquote. But it's hard to see how this can be derived from the monument unless we realize the depth of Fulcanelli's understanding of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Even though he insists that the 4 A's represent the Last Judgment, Fulcanelli describes the attributes of the tarot trump, the world. As we noted above, this suggests that we must somehow include the world in our interpretation. The answer, of course, is Saturn, the planetary attribution of the trump, the world. In our alignment, Gemini Taurus falls on the southeast corner, the junction between the star, our first symbol, and the 4 A's, our last. It seems a natural continuation of the pattern to insert our extra trump at this juncture. And when we do, the tarot image matches the pattern in the sky. Saturn does fall on the galactic edge of Gemini Taurus on our equinox morning, demonstrating the precision of the monument's timing. This becomes even clearer when we look at our tree of life diagram and note that we've been using the bottom 5 paths on the tree. The paths are arranged in the same symmetry as the faces of the monument. The star and the sun are connected through the Sephiroth Yesod, as the moon and the Last Judgment are linked through Malkuth, forming the same oppositions as on the monument. However, the star and the moon are on the same side of the tree as are the sun and the Last Judgment, creating our main northwest-southeast axis. This interlocking symmetry mirrors the arrangement on the monument, and both seem to circle in the middle pillar of the galactic axis. Indeed, with the addition of the world, Saturn, on the galactic edge, the attributions of the middle pillar of the tree of life are revealed. Opposite the world, through Yesod, as we go up the middle pillar in the path of the Tarot trump, art or temperance, attributed to the zodiacal sign Sagittarius, marker of the center of the galaxy. Thus, our pattern of alignment is complete, as on the tree, if we add art for the center of the galaxy in the northwest corner. We are not marking a moment, but recapitulating the art of alchemy. The tarot itself has always contained this insight. The image of art or temperance from the earliest decks have been full of alchemical motifs. Some decks even made the connection explicit by calling the trump alchemy. What in the tarot and on the tree of life is a philosophical construct becomes a way to calculate a specific moment in time on the Hendaye monument. In this, we are reminded of Fulcanelli's admonition on the short or dry path, quote, one single vessel, one single matter, one single furnace, unquote. From this discussion on St. Marcel's dragon, from his discussion on St. Marcel's dragon, could it be that the short method, the quick transformation, is linked to the quality of time? Does Hendaye record the precise moment when the dry work becomes universal or simply happens spontaneously? Could this be Fulcanelli's double catastrophe? Once again, the tree of life and the tarot attributions provide a clue. The path of art alchemy is crossed by the trump called the Blasted Tower, attributed to Mars, and whose symbol is a bolt of cosmic lightning striking a castle tower. This image of destruction blocks the path to the center of the galaxy, giving support to the idea of its destructive nature. The tarot attributions on the tree of life seem to be telling us, as the major Chilea's secret, that the events at the end of time are also the processes of a universal alchemical transmutation. Art alchemy and the Blasted Tower are linked at right angles on the tree, in the same way that the great cross of the fall equinox in 2002 links them in the sky, with Mars resting at right angles to the center of the galaxy and Saturn. Could this arrangement be a harbinger of Fulcanelli's disaster? Fulcanelli, in the Hendaye chapter, is very careful in his choice of disaster words. He begins with Chileism and millennialism, two quaint, almost antiquarian terms. Then it becomes cyclic catastrophe and proceeds quickly to the beast of the apocalypse, of the dragon, which on the days of judgment spews out fire and brimstone on macrocosmic creation, unquote. Soon after this same paragraph, Fulcanelli makes his only use of the phrase double catastrophe while discussing the single place of refuge. Fulcanelli also tells us that the INRI of the upper cross, quote, corresponds to the schematic image of the cycle shown on the base, unquote. This can either be the four A's or the four images on the base as a whole. The metaphor works for both. The inner meaning of INRA is nature renewed by fire, and its gematria points to the processional cycle, which implies a cyclical disaster by means of celestial fire. Quote, thus, Fulcanelli continues, quote, thus we have two symbolic crosses, both instruments of the same torture. Above is the divine cross, exemplifying the chosen means of expiation. Below is the global cross, fixing the pole of the northern hemisphere and locating the fatal period of the expiation. God the Father holds in his hand this globe, surrounded by the fiery sign. From our work so far, that is easily understood. When the cross is in the sky, the galactic alignment made by the first two dragon axes is completed by the cross on Earth, the equinox sunrise on the cusp of Leo Virgo, then the fiery sign will be seen and the days of judgment will be at hand. The cross will fix the North Pole because on the equinox, the Earth's tilt, which causes the seasons, will be at the balance point. It's fixed standing still. And this does in fact locate the fatal period. The equinoxes of the Great Cross. Fulcanelli insists that our hemisphere will be tried by fire in the same way that fire is used to separate the gold from its impurities. In the rest of the chapter, he gives us no further clues to the disaster he is predicting, except that only the elite will survive. When we assemble Fulcanelli's clues, we find that we were looking for a cyclic catastrophe that is timed to the equinox intersections of the precessional great year. It will be a double catastrophe in which the northern hemisphere will be tried or destroyed by fire, seemingly from the mouth of the dragon or the center of the galaxy. The deepest secret of the mysteries, from Isis to the Tarot, Trump art alchemy, has been the location of the center of the galaxy. Even more curious is the fact that Pope Sylvester's chroniclers, with the blessing of the Fatiman Caliph, established the Order of Our Lady of Sion on Mount Zion at the fall equinox of 1002, 1,000 years before the Day of Judgment, predicted by the ancient illuminated astronomy and rediscovered by the alchemist Pope. The same Pope founded an order in Jerusalem that would have far-reaching effects on the history of the next millennium. Pope Sylvester was planning on creating the millennium of peace, ending in the Chileist paradise of the New Jerusalem. Like so many other millennial visionaries before and since, he began with the historical Jerusalem, his influence provoking the first pilgrimages, and then crusades to control the earthly location of the heavenly kingdom. Pope Sylvester is the link between the lost wisdom of the ancient world and the monotheistic Gnosticism that grew out of it, and the Gothic and Italian Renaissances out of which our modern world developed. With Fulcanelli's help, it is possible to see the entire current, going back to at least 2 millennia to Alexandria, Egypt, from Isis the prophetess and the Gnosticism of the emerging popular religions to the family groups of Islam and Judaism and the solitary philosophers of the West, down to Pope Sylvester, the Templars, and the builders of the cathedrals, on through the underground centuries of alchemists and Rosicrucians, to its 20th century explication by Fulcanelli. The current retains its coherence. The Cross at Hendaye, a true monument to the end of time, demonstrates how to calculate the traditional date of the Day of Judgment. It points to a very specific date, September 22nd, 2002, and a specific place, the pause of the Sphinx on the Giza Plateau. Interestingly enough, the Great Pyramid, another mysterious monument at Giza, is thought to contain a prophetic design in its passages and grand gallery that ends on September 17th, 2001. That is exactly 1 year and 5 days before the Hendaye Cross, the same time period required to prepare for the transition from Pharaoh to a living star in Orion, according to the pyramid text. Keeping in mind Jesus's admonition that no one knows the exact date or hour of judgment, then we might think the monument's exactness to be presumptuous at the least. However, Fulcanelli gives us another clue with his use of the phrase such as days of judgment and fatal period. The exact date derived from the monument is a marker to an apocalyptic season. The easiest way to identify a time period by one date is to choose the midpoint. This is logical enough since the equinox itself is the midpoint in so many ways. And if September 22nd, 2002 is the middle of the season of the apocalypse, then how do we identify the beginning and the end or culmination? If we think of the excess on the upper cross, it's meaning 20 years, in addition to Trump XX and the 20th century, then we have an acceptable period on either side of our target date. Strangely enough, this brings our monument into line with two vast systems of counting time from opposite ends of the planet, the Mayan calendar and the Tibetan Kala Chakra, or wheel of time. It also solves the remaining complexities of the monument's design. The Tibetan Kala Chakra contains a prophecy that 860 years after its introduction into Tibet, which happened in 1127, the conditions would be fulfilled for a 25-year period that would culminate in the appearance of the Tibetan version of the New Jerusalem, the hidden city of Shambhala. 860 years after 1127 is 1987, and 25 years after that is 2012. These dates are significant in various versions of the Mayan calendar. The harmonic convergence, Jose Arguelles' attempt at a global New Age coming out party in 1987, was billed as significant in the Mayan calendar. While this is debatable in terms of the traditional Mayan calendrical system, a better choice would have been 1992, the beginning of the last Khatun, or 20-year period. It does mark the significant moment when the eschatological calendars of these widely separated cultures begins to synchronize. September 22nd, 2002 falls on the midpoint of this last Mayan Khatun, 13 Reed and 20 Ahu, calculated from the summer solstice of 1992 to the winter solstice of 2012. While this is a nice fit and a confirmation that all of these systems are working from the same ancient tradition, the question is, can we find it demonstrated on the monument at Hendaye? So far, our interpretation of the base has been more concerned with the corners and their alignments and the attributions than with the faces of the base. We have used their tarot images to calculate the attributions that led us to our target date. We found that the date displayed in the St. Andrew's cross of the edges, a symbol for the equinox alignment. However, the upright square cross, known as the Cross of St. George, is also displayed by the opposition of the east-west and north-south faces. The St. George cross is traditionally used to mark the solstice alignments. The eight-armed cross, the Templar cross, is a combination of the two. Since our interpretation of the Hendaye cross evolves it into the same eight-sided figure, then the unavoidable suggestion is that our equinox cross is the midpoint between two solstice events. Looking at the monument, we find the sun and the star are paired, as are the moon and the four rays. Since each of the pairs are on opposite sides of the monument, we might think of them as being in opposition. Another way to see it is to think of the base as transparent, so that the images are in conjunction. Actually, as we shall see, either way works because what is conjunct on one solstice is opposition on the other. The problem is identifying the star and the four rays. We must discard both Venus and Sirius as candidates for the star. While a summer solstice alignment is possible with both, neither fits our dates. It happens every year with Sirius, too often to be a marker of any singular celestial event. And Venus was behind the sun for the summer solstice of 1992 and in front of the sun for the summer solstice of 2012. The star therefore can not be either of these. However, the sun does relate to the center of the galaxy in the right pattern. It rises in opposition on the summer solstice and in conjunction on the winter solstice during this period, beginning exact on the winter solstice of 2012, the end point of the Mayan calendar. If we think of Fulcanelli's image of the dragon's mouth, the center of the galaxy spewing out flame and light, then the star might be just relate to the eruption from the galactic center. Coupled with the angry sun face, this might also be the clue to the double catastrophe. The star-like disturbance from the center of the galaxy might trigger a reaction in our own sun. It would. It's called a T-Tauri star. If the sun is a representation of the center of the galaxy, if the star is a representation of the center of the galaxy, then what is the meaning of the four rays? Since it depicts the great cycle of time, it might also stand for the main alignment point of the cycle. Galactic center, in that case, the moon would also be in opposition or conjunction on the solstices, and this is in fact the case. Standing again on Giza, between the paws of the Sphinx, we note that on the morning of the summer solstice, June 21st, 1992, there was a partial lunar eclipse in Scorpio, in opposition to the rising sun in Gemini Taurus. This is the start point of our 20-year countdown, and matches the moon 4A's alignment on the Hendaye cross, even to the partial eclipse of the moon's face. Even better is the winter solstice, December 21st, 2012, where the sun will rise in perfect alignment with the center of the galaxy on the cusp of Scorpio Sagittarius, while the moon sets on the cusp of Gemini Taurus. On the summer solstice, at the beginning of our apocalypse season, on the summer solstice, we're at the beginning of our apocalypse season. The moon was conjunct the center of the galaxy and the sun was in opposition. On the winter solstice, the end point of the period, the sun will conjunct the galactic center and the moon will be in opposition. Thus, the solstice alignment, as revealed on the Hendaye monument, acts as brackets or bookends to our midpoint, defining a 20-year period as the season of the apocalypse. Not quite right, but close. We have now answered our third question from chapter 1. What do the symbolic images and ciphers on the cross mean? How are they, quote, the rare symbolic translation of an apocalyptic philosophy? And most important of all, do they suggest a date? We have unraveled the meaning of the images on the cross and now understand how in truth they are the rare symbolic translation of an ancient astronomy. While our answers are somewhat disturbing, 2002 is not far away, they do at least make astronomical sense. He also raised more questions. How did Pope Sylvester know about the center of the galaxy and its millennial anniversary? For that matter, how did the designer of the Hendaye or even Fulcanelli? The galactic core was not officially discovered until 1917, and yet they, as well as the Maya and the Tibetans, clearly knew. Fulcanelli is at its most simple and truthful when he tells us that the unknown sculpture of the monument, quote, possessed real and profound knowledge of the universe, unquote. Now, with our Chileus season identified, we turn our attention to science. Is there any evidence connecting a cyclic precessional-based catastrophe with the center of the galaxy, we wondered? Could an asteroid swarm also be somehow involved, as Meverell suggests? And most important of all, how could any catastrophe theory give us information on the inner process of alchemical transformation? All right, that was a lot to swallow. So clearly the world didn't end in 2002 or 2012, and not even in 2022. But you can feel it, the entropy beginning. And it began in 2002, really revved up in 2012, especially with like the tragic events at Sandy Hook. And here we are in 2022, and the apocalypse is in the air. The solar cycle is still going. We're moving into where we should be getting maximum amount of sunspots on the sun, but that doesn't appear to be happening. And so the 2002 date is the beginning of the season of the apocalypse. I'm going to say that season is going to last until around 2040 or so. And it's a wider system than that. It's several 20-year cycles, several Mayan cartoons. So the cartoon that ended in 2012 that begins the next cartoon, which ends in 2032. Right. And so I would look for that period from 2012 to 2032 to be an extremely apocalyptic period. And as we saw it 8 years after 2012 was 2020, in which everything began to fall apart. And so that's chapter. And I want to thank you all for watching. My name is Jay Widener. This is Reality Check. Hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.